The Secret Dream Lives of Engineers. Humans are not built of the tender, slippery organs we imagine in idioms, no more than autumn begins on a specific day in September. We are built of machinery, not the shiny, precise gizmos of robot movies, but basic, near-anachronistic machinery. Reduction gears and crankshafts, connecting rods and 4-bar linkages, all rhythmically reciprocating inside us, their bronze oil-light pivots spirographing silently in our hips. Your balance is not governed by some mess of tubes and fluids in your ears, no more than listening is endowed by tiny bones shaped like Monopoly pieces. Those were both lies, invented by an audiologist at a dinner party to impress a beautiful but gullible encyclopedia editor. No, your balance is maintained by a gyroscope, the size of a sparrow, spinning inside your ribs. Frictionless and perfectly aerodynamic, it was set in motion when your father withdrew from your mother. That flash you saw in her eyes, that was your gyroscope, beginning. Furthermore, your mind is not the lump of pinkish macaroni covered with electricity that you've seen in textbooks. No, your mind is the workings of a music box, the miniature gears, the spiked drum, the reverberating fingers. But you suspected this already. When you smelled an old lover's perfume on a stranger in the subway, it startled you, like 3 unprovoked notes sounding from a drawer in a distant room. You wonder how I understand all this, but to be honest, it's not always obvious. Every morning, the dawn enters the vague, half-lit factory of my bedroom, incarnated as a middle-aged shop foreman with a clipboard in his hand. He speaks loudly out of habit. "Don't know what ails it, but it flat out won't start." Gesturing to a bewildering system of connecting rods and Acme thread screws. He looks to me expectantly, as if I am a mechanic or a millwright who should intuitively understand this machine. But I just lay there, baffled at the perplexing mechanism of myself, frozen but for the gyroscope spinning quietly at its center. At that hour, all I can understand, or even sense, is that the day is coming, and that there is work to be done. I'd like to dedicate this poem to my team representing the Boston Cantab Lounge. We're all here as individuals, but a lot of us are here because of the dedication and coaching and sacrifices of our teams. So this is for Rick McIntyre, Caroline Harvey, Simone Beaubien, and Don Gabriel. It's called Alloy. I am standing in a steel mill in Indiana, the air thick with steam and sulfur, shirt sweat stuck to my back, staring transfixed at a 5-story waterfall of liquid metal. It smelled like lightning. The plant manager shouts, "Lot of that's World Trade Center. Salvaged a lot of good steel out of there." I shout back, asking how it will be used. He points to the smudged order sheet on his clipboard, Colt Manufacturing Company. "One of our best customers," he shouts. And right there, I am struck by our splendid fascination with destruction, pervasive in every aspect of our humanity. Barn raisings have become cultural anachronisms, but black and white pictures of blown-out buildings speak to us as art. We celebrate birth with greeting cards, but death warrants public ceremony. We want news of war before peace, prefer movies set in Armageddon rather than Eden, and celebrate both victory and defeat with vandalism. But what bothers me most about this is how natural it feels to be inspired by these things. It feels like we've given in to entropy, resigned ourselves to a morality or a reality where it's always easier to kill than to conceive, crush than to create. It feels like we're scared of creation. It seems abstract, unattainable, the stuff of gods and colliding supernovas, not human hands. But we know that these hands are capable of destroying almost anything that has been given to us. And so that's where we find our inspiration and what we can relate to. They store the completed steel at the far end of the mill. Rack upon symmetric rack of gleaming steel bars, 20 feet long, the potential to be anything. And I want this to be our identity, our feeble imitation of creation, our human hands barely grasping our Promethean gift well enough to just rearrange the atoms already given to us, but doing so to form something valuable and purposeful out of ruin and death. I want those innate monoliths to become monuments to not taking the easy way out. Proof that we are willing to expend energy to subvert chaos. Evidence that something other than catastrophe and calamity can stir human emotion. I want that ruin-worshipping part of us to be torn out, trucked to a dark green building in the Midwest, ground up like an old car or a twisted girder dark with blood, melted down into a glowing river of innocence, and then recast and redistributed as a new human psyche that is ignorant of the relative ease of destruction, but still willing to be amazed by the phenomenon of creation. I want all those gleaming steel bars to become incubators instead of more guns, and I want that to be beautiful to me.
Now, it's not called a chicken show. It was the exposition of the Northeastern Poultry Congress, and it was free. I'd just driven 138 miles, spent $15 on gas and tolls to have lunch with someone who didn't even show up. And I felt like I should do something, anything, before driving back, and this was free. Now, I don't have much recent experience with chickens, but when I was 9 years old, we took a class field trip to a poultry processing plant called The Last Stop. I remember three things about The Last Stop: the overhead conveyor belt of doomed and kicking chickens, a defeathering machine, and the noise. You cannot imagine how loud The Last Stop sounded to a 9-year-old. But the exposition of the Northeastern Poultry Congress is even louder. Imagine 200 different breeds of birds pissed off and trying to establish a pecking order from inside their cages. Rows and rows of cages, a whole stadium full of cages. So I walked the rows, got my money's worth. I learned there's a lot of different kinds of chickens. You got plain chickens, fancy chickens, feather-footed chickens, iridescent chickens, Welsh chickens, English chickens, chickens. And of course, they have much more precise scientific names besides just chicken. But by then, I had me a paper cup of beer and a paper carton of barbecue chicken fingers, just for the irony, and so they were all just chickens to me. And their owners, farm girls, red-cheeked and braided, their mothers, all wearing denim shirts, decorated with pictures of their favorite breeds and glittery appliques. It's a good thing it rained that day, because judging by the number of embroidered satin jackets I saw, this event had emptied the volunteer fire departments of Western Massachusetts, there to cheer on little sisters competing in their first novice poultry showmanship competition. An event where nobody laughed when an elderly judge asked a little girl, "So, do you like raising big cocks?" Over in the back, a crowd gathered for an incubator raffle. By the duck pens, I heard two farmers so studiously discussing the sex lives of their roosters that I felt ignorant. And isn't that why this is funny? Because you're sitting there listening to a poetry CD, feeling comfortable in making fun of these people because you're ignorant of how they live, agreeing with my mockery only because you can't relate. But there they were, nurturing life, being awarded blue ribbons for nurturing it beautifully. 9-year-old girls cradling pullets the way city girls cradle Barbies that never have needs and can never die in the night. And there I was, raised in the country myself, looking down on these people, no different than me, just taking a different path. And so this poem is an apology, disguised as a joke with a last-minute guilt trip punchline. An apology for being a voyeur, for too easily indulging the instinct to treat anything foreign as if it was funny. I told you, It's not called a chicken show. In all the outcry over high gas prices and America's relationship with the Middle East, an interdenominational coalition of religious leaders has formed. And they're campaigning against the big three automakers' sinfulness of producing gas-guzzling automobiles. Their catchy slogan is, "What would Jesus drive?" Now, I've never heard how they answered their own question, but if they'd asked me, I would have told him that the Son of God would have driven the perfect street rod, top chopped low and painted a heavenly glow the man millions call Lord would roll in a 32 Ford. And when his glory and grace was challenged by Lucifer to race, he'd grab a hold of that hearse and jam it in first, and like water into wine, thy will shall be thine. Jesus would have smoked him off the line. Or maybe Jesus would ignore our whole man-made holy war, end this whole secular charade by crowding all our gods into one big Escalade. Alpines pumping prayers and mantras and chants with bass so deep it'd make an atheist want to dance. Rolling gold-spoke Daytons with 22s, an SUV big enough for Hindus, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And wouldn't you know, in the very back row, sure as the sutras were written, there would be Buddha just sitting. Or maybe Jesus would drive a ground-pounding, car-crushing Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Come see Yahweh bring doomsday to Orange County Raceway in his Chevrolet. Monster truck that could leave Thomas awestruck. It'd have tires the size of tabernacle choirs and an exhaust so loud it'd make the siege of Jericho proud. You see, everybody would believe in a prophet whose truck had JC highlighters on top of it. But I think if those religious leaders had really raised their questions to the heavens and asked, Jesus, what would you drive? Then in no hypocrisy of prophecy, they would have seen in a hurry God come down from heaven in a fury. A Plymouth Fury, a full race altered wheelbase nostalgia superstock, running the quarter and 10 ticks of the clock, and you would have heard those ministers' jaws drop when Jesus pulled that roaring Mopar to a stop and said, "Look, I didn't walk upon water to become political fodder, and I didn't go to Jerusalem upon an ass so you could preach about gas. Now, I'm proud of my dad's creation, so I'm all for conservation, but I never told a parable that said SUVs were terrible. There's nothing in the scriptures about fuel-air mixtures, and nobody's going to Hades for driving a Mercedes. In fact, the only sinners I see are you ministers, using my name for publicity, twisting my words to call for horse-drawn carriages, same as you did against same-sex marriages, but then talking about greenhouse gases trying to hide your altar boy trespasses. You see, I care less about emissions than your own moral omissions, so I want you to stop preaching to Ford about civics and instead stop bombing clinics. I want you to pretend like there's a new commandment in Deuteronomy that's got nothing to do with fuel economy. I told you once, let he without sin be the first to cast stones, so thou shalt not tell the Motor City how to build cars. Mosquito, insistent in the sniper's ear. Coincidental fireworks as the bomb squad deliberates red versus green. A chandelier delivery missing the stop sign outside a watchmaker's window. The swell and shatter of clay jars behind Gomorrah's smoldering walls. The jangle and crash of her belt still looped, hitting the floor behind me. Jangle and crash of her belt still looped, hitting the floor behind me. As a child, I would sit in my father's lap and just marvel at his hands. Nails blood-blackened by misswung hammers, one fingertip mangled by a lawnmower blade, but devout even in pain. I've never heard him swear. He always earned his living, our living, with his hands, skin absorbing the hazards of each occupation, scars and bumps telling stories of homes built, fishing boats repaired. The man inscribed a whole history of second-hand cars across those scun knuckles. I always admired how tough he was, how he never cried, no matter how much it hurt. How he once removed 12 stitches at the breakfast table with a jackknife and pliers, just to save us a doctor's bill. So I set out to inherit these traditions, bicycle accidents, skin left on apple tree trunks, my own rows of calluses earned in the summer blueberry fields. But years and miles, textbooks and college degrees, warm offices and business lunches become my life. And I have lost my father's hands, ceased building that maze of stories and lessons upon my palms. My father says he's proud of me, my business cards, my khaki button-down work clothes. Even says he's proud of my lower back that doesn't stiffen each morning. But I still envy his hands, their roughness, their evidence of a true labor and craft that mine now lack. At home for Christmas, I always sleep in, drink coffee by the fireplace, look up as he stomps through the door, brushing the icicles from his beard. Would I get him a Band-Aid so he doesn't have to shed 3 layers of wet clothes? No, he didn't cut himself. It's just so cold out they crack like this sometimes. Patched up, he asks, almost apologetically, for help with the firewood. His back is bothering him even more these days. And so I finish my coffee and go upstairs to begin changing into those real work clothes that I keep at home. But I find myself dressing slowly, dreading the sharp bite of the wind and the tiring swing of the axe that awaits, until I look outside and see my father struggling through the snowdrifts without me, and I am so disappointed in myself, disappointed that I've gotten soft and unaccustomed to real labor, disgusted that I've become a white-collar tourist in my own working-class homeland. So before I step out into that cold Maine winter, I'm always careful to slide gloves over these city hands, careful to hide their new identity, so that when I lay my hands to work beside my father's, he will not notice our difference. Late night, Motor City Drive, and I hear it come on howling like a pagan vision. Window smash, 76 Monte Carlo, ugly block square relic that would only get stolen in Detroit. Hauling flat out, swerving mad, left side leaning, tire blown and ripped away. Chrome rim grinding pavement, spewing sparks like a dying comet defying gravity. Rear view blue lights, but that brother's hunched hard over the wheel, trying to pull the machine into himself. Arms furious, twitching, fighting it bare rim, slamming potholes, swerving lanes, just screaming, but he's hammered down, bailing hard for 8 Mile, like the city's edge was the only escape. And back then, I would have hoped he made it.
Wish the Motor City had no streets, leaving empty grid of tired dots and Motown beats. Felt once when we knew there was a way out. I think you knew, but maybe I still have my doubts. And we'd finally know if we're never going back or never have the faith to go.
3 ways to navigate the D. Poet girl on a bicycle says, Woodward the Father, Livernois the Son, and Grand River the Holy Ghost. Maps show downtown planned out as a wheel. Or take the Fisher Building as your North Star, brilliant at the edge of an abandoned sea. But despite landmarks, I can't find my way back. Some nights in this rarefied New England air, I feel the gasoline boiling in my veins. Hear through the subterranean tunnels below Roxbury the distant lullaby of a forgotten metropolis. But it's Detroit, so she sings like a 4 a.m. drag race on Telegraph, pounds like the heartbeat of stamping presses on Mount Elliott. I want to look back across Mass Ave, the Pike 401 94, the oily truck-smooth sheen of Grand River, and even with this head start, see blue lights swing sideways at a parking lot to at least try. Show that I had something she would chase me for, prove I left with anything valuable she'd want back.
Wish the Motor City had no streets, leaving empty grid of tired dots and warehouse beats. Felt once when we knew there was a way out. I think you knew, but maybe I still have my doubts. And we finally know if we're never going back or never have the faith to go.
So I call it down. Blessing or plague, let it happen. Let the streets wither up and blow away in the lunchtime whistle of the Cadillac plants in Hamtramck. Stop the Motor City's endless restlessness. Arrest its relentless exhalation of broken bodies at shift end. Finally tell me if this is exile or exodus. Some days I don't know if I left city or woman, escaped from present or future. But as long as that city's wrapped up in escape route freeways, she and I will reverberate between a way out and a way back, always leaving ourselves the last open exit.
I wish the Motor City had no streets, leaving empty graves, tired dots, and plus 8 beats. Felt once when we knew there was a way out. I think you knew, but baby, I still had my doubts. And we'd finally know if we're never going back or never had the faith to go.
as long as I'm living on hope, I'll imagine that, of all possibilities, we'll both be south of 8 Mile when it all goes down. When the Trinity collapses, when the wheel comes undone, only the Lodge Freeway remains, and we're on it, driving like it's stolen. All 4 tires blown, 10,000 stars spitting from each blazing rim. The factory lights extinguished, the gleaming new Chryslers lying fallow on the line. And this, the last road, is melting away behind us as we drive into the silent, waiting heart of Metropolis. Fireflies wrapping round the windshield like we're a delta in the city's electric current. And we don't even know where this familiar freeway ends anymore. The Fisher Building's gone dark, cause there are no more ways out. And the top's down, engine wailing its lungs full of the night, charging into that city of industry and obsolescence, horsepower, history, and chrome. And finally, we have only one direction to go.
Had no streets.
Kenny Howard was the closest thing to Leonardo da Vinci this country had ever seen. Equal parts artist and inventor, his slender brushes ripped the obedient pinstripes off 1930s fenders and flung them back at rebellious 50s hot rods in sharp angles and voluptuous curves. He sacrificed the souls of motorcycles to voodoo gods so he could build bikes more evil than the Hells Angels that rode them. And he crafted guns so iniquitous that if steel could turn to flesh, they would have become the kind of women that fuck you in the bar and drink whiskey in your bed. In the first black and white picture, he is a lean, tough-looking man, hair tangled, sideburns shaggy. He could be a model for one of the clothing designers like Von Dutch that have seized the recent hot rod revival and sold it back to us at rock star prices. But you've never heard of Kenny Howard, and he wanted it that way. Wanted his legendary art to stand on its own. So while other capital K custom culture icons built monuments to their names, Kenny invented an alias, charged little for his work, lived on a bus on the brink of poverty and anonymity by choice. In the second picture, he's lighting a cigarette with an oxyacetylene torch, a 2-foot iron-melting flame inches from his lips. He's staring at the camera, eyes hard as chrome, jeans ripped and torn. He once said he didn't own any pants without holes because money just made the struggle of life harder. So even if he had lived to see his outlaw world go mainstream, as Britney Spears and Fred Durst accept awards wearing drag race t-shirts and $800 Von Dutch belt buckles, he would have scoffed at their material worship of a counterculture era of which he was the finest illustrator. But the real irony is that Kenny Howard was Von Dutch. The alias he invented for peace and refuge from the material life has been copyrighted and sold off with no respect for the artist, just fodder for the commercial machine he spent a whole lifetime rejecting. But our culture's hunger for celebrity-endorsed fashion seldom researches the statements it makes. So now we've got kids too young to drive, shopping for $85 trucker hats, deifying this artist who allegedly spent years hiding in the desert after killing his wife and unborn child in a drunk driving accident. And we've got P. Diddy and Brandy and Dennis Rodman so gladly flashing this label, whose namesake was a notorious racist and signed his letters Heil Hitler. When you pay $200 for a shirt with a guy's name on it, you're paying for the name, not the shirt. And you don't get to winnow out what part of the name you advertise. You get it all. You get the revolutionary artist and inventor. You embrace the intrinsic hypocrisy of the brand image, and you take as your symbol a raging alcoholic with blood on his hands, hate in his heart. It's a good thing Von Dutch's art is now locked away in museums. Old hot rodders want to believe his ghost still walks this earth. But if he does, I'll bet he's looking for those guns by now, because like anything else Kenny Howard ever built, they were beautiful but deadly, flawed, but at least they were real.
Give it up for Eric Darby.
Come on in. I got a sale on Scratch and Dent Dreams. Whole cases of imperfect ambitions, stuff the idealist couldn't sell. Yeah, I know, none of it's got price tags. You decide how much it's worth. And none of it's got glossy colored packaging, but it all works just fine. I got rainy day swing sets, good night kisses, and stationary stars still flying at the speed of light. And over there and back, if you dig down through those alabaster stoplights and those old 45s, there's a whole crate of secondhand hope. Yeah, right there, that's real chrome. You just gotta work, polish it up a little bit. Most folks give up too easy, trade it in for some injection molded here and now. And over there, across the freeway, you see that purple awning flapping in the breeze? That's Mama Genuine's shop. She's older than all of us put together, but she still laughs like a house. Now, she only sells tools, but not like you know. She's got saws that put back together, drills that make whole. Mama's a cool legend to know, and she sells duct tape too. And down there at the end of the block are two kids, crew-cutting pigtails, sitting behind a vinyl-top table selling peanut butter ice cream out of a galvanized pail. And there's no metaphor there, it's just good ice cream. So here's what you do. Take a look around, pick out what reminds you of places you wanted to be but gave up on going, and jam it all in this big box called Now. Then go across the street to Mama Genuine's, ask her how she's been, show her what I gave you, she'll know exactly what you need. And then go back out in the center of that freeway and get to work, making it all fit. You won't have any directions or factory numbered tabs, but don't panic. There's 100 ways to do it right and none to do it wrong, because you're starting out with what's already been given up upon. You can't do any worse. Use the tools Mama gave you. Hum a little while you work. And if you find yourself sprouting extra thumbs, take a break. Go down the block. Get yourself an ice cream. Smile when they hand it to you, tip them if you can, and when you get back, it's all gonna make sense. You'll see where it's gonna fit perfect and where the duct tape has to go. And when you get finished, take whatever spare parts you got at the bottom of Now, make yourself a little sign that says tomorrow, and hang it on your masterpiece. And then you go back down the block to where those two kids are packing up their peanut butter enterprise because somebody told them they'd fail, and I want you to hand them tomorrow. Make sure they know how important it is. And after they've run off with it, all elbows and smiles, y'all can come back here. We'll do it all over again. Now, I'm not telling you this to make a profit. That's how so many good ideas go wrong. I'm just tired of seeing everyday people streaming through these doors, convinced they gotta hawk even their littlest hopes and dreams to fund their 401ks. I'm tired of seeing this whole world bent on going big or giving up, only handing out glory to newspaper headlines and storybook endings, because the truth is, I think we need those swing sets most on the rainy days. I'm happy going to sleep after just a good night kiss, and I believe that beauty can be as simple as two kids, crew-cutting pigtails, handed me a scoop of peanut butter ice cream that tastes so good you'd think it was a dream.
Jimmy was a right bright child, born in the 93rd percentile of Generation Where. He drew backward skies and high school margins, ate even banana sandwiches laced with cinnamon, and sang infinite symphonies in his mind. And while the Heb Bob mob revived so dead scribes, Jimmy poked through back alleys with fabulous junkmen and built these fantastic mad wagons out of washing machines and turpentine. He was loved by everyone, and one day swept a two-gone girl named May from her platforms to the clouds, and the two leapt breathless into his latest rampant mad wagon and set out tripping laughter across the plains, waking even statues with their dreams, all while no one paid them mind among the thousands doing same. And even when the mad wagon last refused to spin, Jimmy and May settled down beside a tumble-down silo, painted it 12 tones of violet, built about a farm of glass and light, and sold year-round watermelons and cinnamon-flavored wine. And while in this fertile land, May also ripened, and they became three. But feared by this first responsibility, Jimmy and May heeded whispers of convention, felt the calming press of society at their back, and reformed forthright, spread carpet across the fields, destroyed the kaleidoscope winery, and let the rubber-stamped grid gods lure them away to properly raise James Jr., the 53rd percentile of Generation Y. He drew his skies straight, took his cinnamon only in cider and pies, memorized the so-dead scribes, learned the proper fear of leering junk men, drove a careful K car and was liked by everyone. Went 4 years parallel, an acceptable sweetheart Sue, both commuting the freeways of three wide weaving, left side leaning omnimobiles, all while no one paid the mind among the millions doing same. And when times were approved by church and magazine, they lay down together and begat as so-dead scribes were banned for their iniquity, and begat as visionary painters were forbidden to transgress lines, and begat as the fast-fading junk men were lynched for prolonging memory, and begat as the heretics were issued razor wire necklaces and told to keep still, begat James 7, the 50th percentile of Generation Who. He wore a starch-straight uniform each day, ate his ready-made meals without even salt, and kept his head down, so as to be never seduced by skies. And of course, no one paid him mind among the everyone doing same, all cogs in a finely flawless society, revolving, having forgotten about revolution. But James 7 did not belong in the lockstep life of his time. He felt something different, felt longings in his fingers, felt stirrings in his toes, felt ancestral journeys crowding at his pores, felt so different he could march no more, and exploded to run past the astonished throngs traveling one-way roads, past the rousing choruses shouting of his dissension, at the last moment reaching out to this two-gone girl with restless borealis eyes and said, "Run with me." And that two-gone girl realized that her name was November, and this was not her world either, took Jimmy Seven's hand, and the two of them ran past the rubber-stamped grid god legacies, past everyone judging them for not doing same, running and running until the conformity fell behind, running and running until they came upon this tumble-down old silo, painted like every sunset ever known, found in the tangled gardens at its base, silver bottles shaped like freedom, and there, drunk on cinnamon-flavored wine, they lay down together, laced their fingers and dipped them up into the night sky, and began to spin those stars backwards about them. And that whole world looking down, looked up, and they realized, and they too began to run.